The fire's warm, but the woods never rest. You've found your way beyond the pines. The footage from Devil's Vein took 2 weeks to clean up. Half the clips came out distorted, audio warped, light bleeding at the edges. Ruby said it was the humidity, but none of us really believed that. We'd been holed up in a roadside motel ever since. 2 rooms, flickering lights, the smell of old carpet and rain. Ruby's laptop was the only real glow in the place, playing back what we'd shot underground. Evan tossed me a granola bar from across the room. That one's labeled meal replacement. You on a diet now? After 2 weeks of gas station food, I said. Yeah, sure, I'm cleansing. Mia was sitting cross-legged on the bed beside me, sorting camera batteries. You also earned the award for worst flashlight operator in a crisis. I was under pressure, I said, grinning. Sam didn't look up from her phone. You're under pressure every time you see a moth. That one got a small laugh, first in days. Ruby paused the playback. The frame froze on the metal crate from the mine. Property of Vale Logistics Operations Division printed along its edge. Still gives me chills, Mia said quietly. Run it again, I said. Ruby scrubbed the frame back. Same flicker, same flash of static just before the words vanished. You think it's military? Evan asked. Ruby shook her head. No contracts, no company records. It's like they don't exist. Mia picked up a paper from the stack beside the laptop. Except for this one. Ash Grove Restoration Project, Virginia, 1997. Ruby nodded. Fire, total loss. Vale listed as the contractor. Burned church, I said. That's a change of scenery. At least it can't cave in, Evan muttered. Mia shot me a half smile. Unless you lean on it. Then you can hold the flashlight, I said, and she laughed softly. Outside, rain tapped against the window, the neon sign buzzing red through the blinds. I reached for her hand, fingers brushing. We'll take it easy this time, I said. You said that before Devil's Vein. Yeah, I said, smiling. And technically, we're all still here. Ruby closed the laptop, the Vale logo fading to black. All right, road trip. The drive to Virginia took the better part of the day. The GPS cut out before noon, leaving Ruby's paper map spread across her knees like something from another decade. By the time we hit the back roads, the fog had swallowed the hills. Pines leaned close over the gravel track, blackened in spots from old fire. The air smelled faintly of rain and something colder beneath it, like smoke that never fully left. This is it, Ruby said, pointing ahead. Ash Grove should be just past the creek. The road crossed a bridge of warped planks and came out into a clearing. The church was barely more than a ruin, half a foundation, a leaning bell post, and the skeleton of a steeple darkened by soot. Moss covered everything. Place looks like it's been dead for 50 years, Evan said with his camera. Perfect for B-roll, Sam replied. Mia crouched near the broken wall, brushing soot from a burned hymn book. You sure this is the right place? Ruby checked the map again. Coordinates match exactly. I turned toward the tree line, where an old brick structure slumped in the shadows. It didn't belong to the church. Too industrial, too deliberate. The rusted door at its base hung slightly open, like it had been forced once and never shut right again. Hey, I said quietly, you seeing that? Mia followed my gaze, then frowned. That part wasn't on any layout. Ruby exhaled. Then it's probably what we're looking for. The bell above us creaked once in the wind. Slow, heavy. And for a moment, none of us said a word. The rain had stopped by the time we unpacked the vans, but the air still felt heavy, like it hadn't decided whether to clear or turn back. Mia crouched to zip open a gear case. "Batteries first," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet. "Then lights." Ruby checked her clipboard. "We'll run one camera wide on the church, one tight on the brick building." Evan grinned, because nothing says good idea like exploring the only part still standing. Sam looked over her lens and smirked. "Says the guy who fell into a drainage pit last time." "That was a design flaw," Evan muttered. I walked to the edge of the clearing, taking in the scene. The trees stood close, too close, like the forest had been slowly swallowing what was left. The church walls rose barely to my chest, but that brick outbuilding, it was different. Old, built to last, and somehow untouched by the fire. Mia joined me, brushing hair from her face. "You notice how clean that doorway is? Everything else is charred." "Yeah," I said quietly. "It's almost like it's been opened recently." She frowned. "You think someone's been here?" "Could be, or something else." Ruby called out from behind us. "Found something!" We walked back to where she stood, near the side wall of the church. She pointed to a small metal crate half buried under collapsed boards. Same faded gray as the one from the mine. "Don't tell me," Evan said. "Vale Logistics." Ruby nodded. VL06. Sam knelt, taking a picture. So they were here too. Mia exhaled. First a mine, now a church. What were they even doing? No one answered. The wind moved through the pines with a low whistle, stirring ash that hadn't shifted in decades. We pried open the lid. Inside were brittle papers sealed in plastic sleeves. Blueprints, maps, some kind of access diagram labeled sub-level entry. Ruby held it up. "You seeing this? There's a tunnel marked underneath the church." Evan chuckled nervously. "Guess we know what's on the schedule for tomorrow." I stared at the drawing, tracing the thin black lines leading below ground. "If that door leads there, we're not waiting till tomorrow." Mia sighed. "Tyler, we just got here." "I know," I said. "But whatever's down there, it's the reason Vale kept coming back." Sam lowered her camera. "And if it's sealed for a reason?" I met her eyes. "Then we find out why." The sun dipped lower behind the trees, turning the clearing gold. For a second, everything felt almost peaceful, until the wind shifted, and the old bell creaked again, slow and hollow. Ruby looked up at it. "That thing shouldn't still move." No one said anything after that. The sun dropped fast behind the ridge. By the time we'd locked the gear back in the vans, fog had crept up through the pines again, thicker than before. Ruby stood near the fire pit, flipping through the blueprints we'd pulled from the crate. The paper crackled softly in the breeze. "These aren't standard layouts," she murmured. "There's no ventilation, no secondary exit. Whatever Vale built down there, it wasn't meant for easy access." Evan poked at the fire with a stick. "So we just found a secret bunker under a burned church. Great, I'm sure that's fine." Mia smirked. "Don't act like you're not dying to look." "Oh, I'm curious," he said, "just not die curious." Sam was quiet, staring toward the outline of the church in the mist. "Did anyone notice the bell moved?" We all turned. The old post stood crooked in the fog, the bell dangling from its frame, still swaying slightly. Ruby frowned. "Wind?" "There isn't any," Sam said. I walked closer. flashlight cutting through the haze. The metal glinted dully, old, fire-scorched. I reached out, steadied it, cold to the touch. The chain above creaked once, then stilled. Behind me, the fire popped, and someone let out a nervous laugh. Mia called out, "Tyler, you're not helping your reputation for bad decisions." I grinned over my shoulder, "Just making sure it's not rigged." "Yeah, well," Evan said, tossing another branch on the fire, "if that thing starts ringing by itself, I'm driving home tonight." Ruby folded the blueprint and tucked it away. "Let's not start ghost stories before bed." But her voice didn't sound convinced. The fog pressed in closer, curling around the base of the church ruins. The air smelled faintly of wet ash and something metallic beneath it, like the memory of burnt wire. We turned in one by one. Sam kept her camera pointed toward the brick structure until the very last second, red recording light blinking faintly. Inside the tent, I lay listening to the valley breathe. Small noises amplified by the mist. A branch creaked. Gravel shifted. Once, I thought I heard a low metallic clang, distant but sharp, like something moving below us. I felt Mia's hand brush mine in the dark. "You hear that?" she whispered. "Probably the wind," I said automatically. "There's no wind," she answered. We lay there a long time before either of us spoke again. Somewhere in the distance, the bell creaked once, soft enough to almost be imagined. Morning broke slow and gray. The fog hadn't burned off. It just settled lower, clinging to the grass and the rims of our coffee cups. Evan looked like he hadn't slept. "Anybody else hear metal scraping last night?" Mia zipped her jacket. "You mean the wind?" "Yeah," he said. "Sure, the wind that sounds like a hinge." Ruby crouched near the fire pit, unrolling the blueprints again. "The entry marked here," she said, tapping the page, "lines up with that brick structure." Sam adjusted her camera strap. "And we're actually going in?" I checked the flashlight batteries. "We'll look, just far enough to see what's there. We stay together." Mia gave me a skeptical look. "That's what you said last time." "Yeah," I said, "and we're still together." Ruby smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Let's just document, no hero stuff." The grass was slick as we walked toward the brick building. Up close, the smell of soot was sharper, old, baked into the walls. The door hung at an angle, one hinge rusted to a bright orange streak. I pushed gently. It creaked, but didn't resist much. Inside was a short corridor, brick-lined, maybe 10 feet deep before it dropped into darkness. A metal ladder led down, rusted but intact. Ruby lifted her flashlight. "This shouldn't even be here. The church records said they didn't have a basement." Sam kept filming. "Then what's under it?" I leaned over the edge. Cold air rolled up from below, carrying that same faint metallic scent we'd noticed last night. Mia shivered. "Feels like a crawl space." "Or a shaft," Ruby murmured. "The blueprint labeled this area Sub-Level 2A. That means there's at least a 1. Evan chuckled nervously. "What kind of church needs numbered sub-levels?" Nobody answered. We tested the first few ladder rungs. They held, though they groaned under weight. Ruby looked at me. "If we go down, we mark every step. No shortcuts." I nodded. "Deal." Mia sighed and pulled her flashlight from her pocket. "You realize we could just wait until Hank gets here, right?" "Yeah," I said. "But then we'd have to explain why we didn't look." She stared at me for a second, then shook her head. "You're impossible." "Yep," I said. clipping the light to my jacket. That's why you like me." Evan muttered, "Romantic comedy, found footage edition." The air grew colder the further we went inside. Somewhere beneath our feet, I heard it again, that dull, hollow clang, like something shifting metal against stone. Ruby stopped, eyes narrowing. "Did you hear?" "Yeah," I said softly. "I heard it." Sam's camera light flickered once, then steadied. We all stood there, staring down into the dark. The first thing that hit me was the temperature drop. Halfway down the ladder, the air turned sharp and metallic, like we'd opened a door to something buried too long. My boots scraped the floor with a wet sound when I reached the bottom. The beam from my flashlight bounced off brick walls, slick with condensation. The space was narrow, barely wide enough for two people to stand side by side. Evan called down, "Still in one piece?" "Yeah," I said. "Come on down. Watch the last rung. It's rusted." One by one, the others followed. Mia next, then Ruby, Sam, and finally Evan, whose nervous laugh echoed a little too loudly. Ruby lifted her light toward the ceiling. "These bricks are newer than the church. Late 80s, maybe 90s. Whatever Vale built, it wasn't part of the original structure." Mia turned a slow circle, her light catching a steel door inset into the far wall. It looked heavy, industrial, with a faded yellow stencil reading "Access Tunnel 2A." "Okay," Evan said. "Tell me again how this is a church basement?" Ruby ran her hand across the lettering. "This isn't a basement, it's an installation." Sam filmed in silence, her camera's red light blinking faintly in the dark. "How deep do you think it goes?" "Deep enough for Vale to hide something," I said. I grabbed the door handle. It was cold and left a fine layer of grime on my palm. When I pulled, it resisted, then gave way with a dull metallic groan. The smell hit us all at once. Old air, stale and chemical. Inside was a narrow corridor lined with steel panels. Sections of wire conduit ran along the ceiling, and faded labels marked with Vale's logo trailed into the dark. "Jesus," Evan whispered, "they built all this under a church?" Ruby's voice was low, almost reverent. Whatever they were doing, they wanted it forgotten. We followed the tunnel until it opened into a small chamber. One wall lined with file drawers, the other stacked with empty canisters marked "Biosample Storage." Mia crouched near one of the labels. "Look at this. Ash Grove Project, Phase 2. Ruby lifted a plastic tag from the floor, its string frayed but intact. "Property of Vale Logistics, Operations Division." "Same as the mine," I said. "They were running multiple sites." Sam's camera beeped softly, battery warning. She reached to swap it out. That's when the sound came. Faint at first, metal on stone, dragging. We froze. Evan whispered, "Please tell me that's you." No one moved. The sound came again, closer now, echoing through the tunnel behind us. Slow, deliberate, scraping against the floor. Ruby turned her flashlight toward the sound, but the beam caught only dust and a long smear along the wall, like something had been pulled through it recently. "Back up," I said quietly. "Now." We moved fast but careful, retracing steps toward the ladder. The scraping stopped, replaced by a low, hollow clang that made my chest vibrate. Evan was breathing hard. "Tyler, what was that?" I didn't answer. I just looked back at the open door. Nothing there, just the dark, and the faint echo of something metal shifting deeper underground. By the time we reached the surface, my hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped the flashlight. The air outside felt heavy, wet, and somehow wrong. Evan bent over, catching his breath. "Okay," he said between gasps. "Official vote, we never do that again." Ruby ignored him, already setting the veil tag on a crate near the fire pit. "We got proof," she said quietly. "Physical proof." Mia zipped up her jacket and shook her head. "Proof of what, Ruby? A storage room? Empty canisters? That doesn't explain the noise." Ruby frowned. "It explains part of it. Whatever was stored down there, biosamples, chemicals, something, it's possible a reaction." "No," Sam said. Her voice was flat. That sound wasn't mechanical. She still had her camera in her hands, fingers white on the grip. The lens was fogged from the climb. Evan threw a branch into the fire. Sparks scattered. Then what was it? I sat down hard on a cooler, staring at the door to the brick structure. "Whatever it was," I said, "it was moving." The others fell silent. Mia finally said, "We should leave, pack up and go." Ruby looked up. "And just walk away from this?" "Yes," Mia snapped, "because people who don't walk away end up like the mine crew, or the ones who built that thing." Nobody argued right away. Only the soft crackle of fire and the faint hiss of cooling metal filled the air. Then Sam turned her camera toward the ruins. "Tyler," she said slowly, "was that door open when we came up?" I followed her gaze. The steel door on the brick structure hung wider now, a few inches more than before. Evan swore under his breath. "You closed it, right?" "I thought I did." A long gust rolled through the clearing, colder than before, and something deep inside the ruins gave a dull, resonant clang. Mia took a step closer to me. That wasn't wind. Ruby turned on her recorder. "Everyone inside the tent," she said, her voice shaking just slightly. "Now." We backed away from the brick structure, one step at a time. The bell above the ruins groaned, once, slow and low, as if answering back. The night settled in slow, like the fog was waiting for us to stop talking before it crept closer. I couldn't sleep. The fire had burned down to a dull red glow, and the cold was seeping through the tent floor. Evan muttered something in his sleep from the other tent, half a laugh, half a groan. Mia rolled over beside me. "You're still awake?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said, "just listening." "For what?" "I don't know. Maybe for it not to be quiet." Somewhere outside, something brushed against the canvas. Just once, soft, deliberate. Mia froze. I heard it." We both held still. The sound came again, farther off this time, like a slow drag through the grass. Then the faintest chime, metal striking metal. Ruby's voice called from her tent, muffled. "Tyler, you hearin' that?" Before I could answer, Sam unzipped her tent. The tiny click of her camera followed. She stepped out, and the red recording light blinked once through the fog. "Sam, wait," I whispered, pushing out of the tent after her. The air outside was thick, every breath heavy. The lantern by the fire pit was still on, but its light looked weaker, like it was being swallowed. Sam stood near the edge of the clearing, her camera aimed toward the brick structure. "Something moved," she said softly, "near the door." Evan joined us, flashlight trembling in his hand. If this turns into a found footage cliché, I'm suing somebody. Shut up, Ruby hissed. Listen. From the direction of the structure came a scraping sound, metal against stone, just like in the tunnel. But now it was closer and slower, like something testing its footing. Then we saw it. The door of the brick structure, which we'd left half open, was now wide, pushed flat against the wall. Fog poured out of it like breath. For a moment, a faint shape moved in the mist. Not clear enough to see, just a darker patch that shifted as the fog rolled around it. Mia's voice was barely a whisper. Tell me that's a trick of the light. No one answered. Sam's camera caught it, a brief flicker of something tall, thin, and wrong, moving just beyond the edge of the lantern's reach. Then her light went out. Everything fell silent. Then the bell rang. Once, long and deep, cutting through the valley like a warning. By morning, the fog hadn't lifted. It just thinned enough to turn everything the same shade of gray. Our gear was damp, our tempers worse. Nobody slept much. Ruby crouched near the fire pit, coaxing the coals back to life. We're reviewing Sam's footage, she said. It wasn't a question. Sam set her camera on the cooler, eyes hollow from the night. Battery died halfway through, she said softly, but I got maybe 20 seconds before that. Evan groaned. Oh, good, 20 seconds of nightmares. Mia elbowed him. Shut up and listen. I wiped condensation from the lens before hitting play. The tiny screen flickered to life, grainy, green-tinted like an old VHS tape. The video showed the clearing, fog swirling around the open door. Sam's breathing filled the audio, quick but steady. Then the camera shifted slightly right, toward the bell. At first it looked like nothing, just mist and shadows. Then something moved. It wasn't a clear shape, more like a distortion, a ripple where the fog didn't behave right. As it drifted closer, you could see two faint, luminous points hovering near the top of the frame. Eyes. Evan stepped back. Pause it right there. Ruby froze the image. We all leaned in. The eyes weren't reflections. They pulsed, slow, synchronized, like a heartbeat through glass. Sam swallowed. It was standing where Hank parked yesterday. I didn't notice until the bell rang. Mia whispered, so it was watching us. Or waiting, Ruby said quietly. The longer we stared, the more detail seemed to appear. An outline that wasn't quite human, elongated, its shoulders wrong, head tilted as if listening. Then the playback cut to static. For a moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the soft pop of wet wood in the fire. Evan finally broke the silence. Well, he said, voice unsteady, good news. We're officially crazy. I shut the camera off. No, I said, we're officially not alone. By late morning, the fog finally broke, burning off under a pale sun. It should have felt like relief. It didn't. The brick structure sat there the same as before, quiet, cold, the door half open. The only difference was the drag mark leading from the threshold into the woods. Ruby crouched beside it, tracing the groove with a gloved hand. Something heavy, she murmured, or something crawling. Evan stared toward the trees. You know what's crazy? We could leave. Just throw all this in the van and pretend none of this happened. Mia shot him a look. You're the one who said you wanted to be on camera when we found proof. Yeah, he said. Didn't mean footage that stares back. Sam adjusted her camera strap, eyes fixed on the door. We go in. Daylight gives us a better margin. I want stills of the equipment, the wall markings, and that crate. I took a breath, steadying my voice. We go in, record what's left, and we leave before noon. Evan muttered, I'll start the betting pool for who breaks that rule first. We stepped inside again. The temperature dropped instantly, not freezing, just unnaturally still. Dust hovered mid-air like it didn't know where to settle. The chamber looked unchanged, but something new stood out near the corner, an old canvas tarp that hadn't been there last night. Under it, a small table. Ruby lifted the edge. Beneath it were stacked VHS tapes, their labels half peeled, all marked with the same symbol, VL05. And beside them, a cassette recorder. Sam raised her camera. It's Vale again. Ruby frowned. These look older. 80s, maybe. Mia leaned closer. What's on them? Ruby pressed a finger to the recorder's buttons, but they were fused with rust. Then she froze. On the wall behind the table, scratched deep into the concrete, were the words, "Do not play." Evan exhaled. Yeah, that's my cue to leave. I tried to laugh, but the sound fell flat. We'll take the tapes. We don't play them here. We packed the box carefully. When we stepped outside again, the wind had changed, carrying the faint sound of something metallic moving below the ridge, like chains dragging on stone. Ruby looked back toward the dark entrance. It's still down there, she said quietly. And it knows we have its tapes. We waited until after sunset to play it. None of us said it out loud, but daylight had made us bold, and bold was wearing off fast. The fire cracked softly between us. The recorder sat on a crate, wires running to a portable speaker that buzzed faintly in the quiet. Ruby handed me one of the cassettes. Tape 1, she said, marked March 1997. Mia leaned closer. You sure it'll even work? Only one way to find out. The reels began to turn, slow and uneven. At first, just hiss. Then a man's voice, tired and close to the mic. Log date, March 2nd. Vale Operations Division. Test site designation, RH facility. Evan rubbed his arms. Red Hollow. He means Red Hollow. The tape clicked, and the voice returned, faster now, nervous. Containment breach reported in lower shaft. Subject 23 exhibiting cross-frequency interference. Light distortion sustained for 6 minutes before visual contact was lost. Sam frowned. Light distortion? Ruby whispered, That's what we saw. The voice broke with static. Then another came through, a woman, calm, clinical. Do not engage auditory stimulus. Repeat, do not respond to the bell. The speaker popped, once, sharp, and the audio warped, slowing like the tape was being pulled backward through tar. Then came a sound we hadn't heard before. Not the bell, but something beneath it. A low rumble, almost like a growl buried under metal. The mic cracked from the force of it. Containment compromised. They're coming through. Cut the feed. The tape whined, fast-forwarded on its own, then stopped. The reels locked. Smoke curled from the recorder. Kill it! Ruby shouted. I yanked the batteries. The sound died instantly.
For a long moment, no one moved. The smell of burnt plastic hung in the air. Evan broke the silence. "Well, I vote we never do that again." Mia looked at the melted tape, her voice small. "That woman said don't respond to the bell." Ruby nodded slowly. "Yeah, and it's been ringing since the night we got here." I glanced toward the ridge, the burned church silhouetted against the faint moonlight. For a second, I thought I saw the bell sway. No sound this time, just movement, like it was waiting. The fire was dying by the time the wind picked up. It came in low from the valley, cold and restless, carrying the faint smell of ash. Ruby was still staring at the melted recorder. "We barely touched it," she said quietly. "It shouldn't have done that." Evan kicked at the dirt. "Yeah, well, maybe it didn't like being woken up." Mia shivered closer to me. "You think that sound was real? The one under the bell?" "I think," I said slowly, "whoever made those tapes was trying to stop it." Sam checked her camera again. "Audio's fried. It cut out right before the static." She frowned, "But the battery's still full." We all turned at the same moment, not because of what we heard, but because of what we didn't. The forest had gone completely silent. No wind, no insects, just stillness. Then, from somewhere up the ridge, the bell rang. Once. Clearer than before. Mia's hand found mine. "It's closer," she whispered. The sound rolled through the trees, bouncing off the cliffs, heavy enough to make the air tremble. Sam pointed her camera toward the ridge. "There's something by the tower," she said. Ruby squinted. "Where?" "By the bell, I swear. Something just moved." We followed her gaze. Moonlight hit the ruined church just right, lighting the shape of the bell tower and the charred beams around it. For a moment, nothing. Then, in the shadows beneath the bell, something shifted. Tall, narrow, almost blending with the structure. Evan's voice cracked. "Tell me that's a trick of the light." The shape tilted, slow, deliberate, as if it heard him. Ruby whispered, "It's looking at us." I could barely breathe. "No, it's listening." The bell swung again, slow and smooth, but this time it didn't make a sound. Then, every piece of metal in the camp, the tripod, the lantern handles, the camera mounts, started to hum. The air itself felt charged, pressing against our skin. And somewhere, deep below the ground, something heavy began to move. The humming stopped all at once. Then the ground moved. Not like an earthquake, not that sudden. It rolled through the clearing in a slow wave, like something shifting deep underneath us. The campfire hissed and went dark. "Grab the gear," I yelled. Metal clattered as Evan hauled up the light rig and Ruby lunged for the case with the tapes. The soil near the ridge cracked, dry dust spilling upward like steam. Mia stumbled beside me. "It's the tunnel! It's collapsing!" Ruby shook her head. "No, it's opening." A deep groan came from the direction of the brick structure, low enough to vibrate the air in our chests. The steel door flexed inward with a slow, tortured squeal. Sam's camera light flicked on automatically, her voice trembling. "Something's inside." The ground split along the drag mark we'd seen that morning, dirt lifting in jagged seams. The air filled with a choking metallic smell, sharp like ozone and rust. Then the bell rang again, a single deafening strike that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The vibration knocked my knees out from under me. Mia screamed. Evan grabbed her, pulling her back toward the van. Ruby didn't move. She was watching the ridge, eyes wide. "Look," she whispered. The burned church was glowing faintly from within. Not fire, not light, just a dull pulse, like the embers of something buried alive. I reached for Ruby. "Move!" She snapped out of it, running as the ground by the bell tower finally gave way. The slope caved in with a deep, hollow roar, dragging part of the ruins down into darkness. When it stopped, the silence was heavier than the noise had been. Dust rained from the trees. The air felt thinner. And from somewhere down in that new black pit, a faint metallic echo, one last clang, far below. Mia's hand found mine. "Tyler, tell me that was it?" I wanted to, but the earth still trembled, just slightly, like something was breathing down there. By dawn, the ridge was silent again. The air smelled like wet stone and smoke, the kind that clings to your throat long after the fire's out. What was left of the church leaned at an angle, its bell half buried in a fresh sinkhole. We didn't talk much while we packed. Every movement sounded too loud. Every word felt like it might wake something back up. Ruby sealed the crate of tapes in her duffel. "We take these to a lab," she said. "Proper equipment. Maybe there's more audio." Evan shook his head. "You're kidding, right? That thing melted a tape player. What's it gonna do to you?" "Knowledge isn't what kills people," Ruby said quietly. "Ignoring it is." Sam powered down her camera, checking the last frame. The ridge, the pit, the dawn mist curling up from it like breath. "We can't leave this undocumented," she said. "Vale tried to bury it." Mia looked up from the van, eyes red. Maybe they had the right idea. I turned back to the clearing one last time. The wind was back, soft now, brushing through the pines like it always had. For a second, it felt normal, almost peaceful. Then, faintly, from somewhere deep below the ground, metal shifted. Just once. The bell in the rubble gave a tiny tremor, the chain clicking softly against its side. I stared at it for a long time before saying, "Let's go." As we drove down the old logging road, Ruby's phone buzzed in the passenger seat. No service, no signal, but a single notification had appeared on her screen. New voicemail, unknown number, received 4:13 a.m. She tapped play. A hiss of static filled the van. Then a woman's voice, faint, fractured, but familiar. "Do not respond to the bell." The recording cut out. The road wound down the hill, and the burned church vanished in the rearview mirror.